Welcome back to the Be a Man podcast, where we encourage men to be better men. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Be a Man podcast. I am excited you are joining me today. I just had an awesome interview with Troy. He runs the Restoring Manhood account on Instagram and also has a website, and I'll put all that in the description for you. But we have a great conversation about just some cultural issues and how they affect men and how we can better raise men, younger men as well, to take personal responsibility, to stop viewing themselves as victims, and just challenge them in their faith and in their walk and pursuing God as well. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Please go check it out. Go subscribe on YouTube. Go like it, the video, if you enjoy it, and hit that little bell. It'll give you a notification every time there's a new episode, so you can get those when they come out. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or Google or Amazon or Stitcher or any of those other podcasts out there, please go ahead and rate those. I would greatly appreciate that, and subscribe, and most of all, leave a comment. I enjoy interacting. I enjoy the conversation, and my goal in doing all this is to encourage you to be a better man. And I think there's a lot of guys out there who have an amazing backgrounds and opinions and goals and challenges for us all. And we can all be learning, and that should be, men need a challenge, and we can challenge ourselves through things like this. And if you enjoy them, please share with a friend. I greatly appreciate it. As always, I'm humbled by it, but I do this for you to be encouraged to be better men. So with that, let's get into it. All right. Welcome to the podcast. I'm glad you're with me tonight. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Troy Beyer, and I do a lot of things. I guess I'll start with the most important thing. I'm a husband and a father. Like, those are the two most important things that I am. I think when asked to kind of define, like, who are you, what do you do, the easiest thing to go to is like, this is my job. But I think, I don't know, some guys reminded me, like, hey, what's the most important thing to you? I'm like, well, God has called me first. Like, there's some rules about me being a husband. Yeah. That's important. And then after that, it's being a dad. So those are the two most important things I am. So also, I am a school psychologist by credential, I guess you could say, and have been for somewhere around 10 years. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst. So it's kind of another credential that allows me, gives me the tools necessary to quantify behavior and talk a lot about human behavior. And that is a rabbit trail that we could go down for hours if you wanted me to, because a lot of time human behavior and the way it is studied by a lot of those researchers goes very atheistic. But the reality is, if you look at it correctly, God made us very, very, very specifically, and human behavior can lead you straight to Christ, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the opposite direction of what I learned in school. But the more I studied it and kind of looked internally, human behavior, God made us a certain way. So those two things that I have my credential. By title, I'm currently the program director for a special education program for a local charter school in the area I'm in. We're kind of a smaller district. We have around 2,300 students and 4 schools and a homeschool program, students kindergarten through 12th grade. So I work with, 6-year-olds all the way up to 18-year-olds. And so that's, kind of what I do for a job. I'm also kind of like, I have ADHD, and that's why I became a school psych. But so I also am kind of part owners in some businesses with a couple buddies who are working with me, and some friends who are also BCBAs, are working on building an online educational program to work with colleges to teach human behavior. And then another buddy of mine, he's a software guy, and when I came into working with education, I realized that a lot of the software we use is garbage, because I came from mortgage banking, and talked to my buddy, and I'm like, hey, let's start this business. So we started a software company that does some software to help educational platforms work better. Spent 10 years in mortgage banking all the way through the 2008 crash, kind of lived that one. So there's a lot there.
So should people be concerned right now about this coming year?
Very. They should be very concerned. And we can go real deep into money and wealth too. That's something I have recently spent a lot of time kind of talking about, or researching and studying. Yeah. Okay, cool. We can go there. But like, just the way that we view wealth and money, I think as Christians, sometimes we have this idea that the meek, poor pauper is the most holy. but the problem is, if we lack the true understanding of wealth and money as Christians, then how are we going to really fund the revolution, if you want to say, like,
Yeah.
I mean, and God doesn't need money. Now, that's not where I'm going, but God uses people, and he uses good people. And if you study, and this is kind of like a little tidbit of things I've studied, but if you study things like this, I kind of have a stack of books, the Communist Manifesto, you'll start to see that wealth, and true wealth, not necessarily money, but wealth is what allows freedom, which then allows the ability to not be suppressed or oppressed or ignored as a Christian. Your voice can be heard if you are not afraid of losing everything. And if you are not afraid of losing your house or your food or your ability to pay your rent, or even, or all of the basic fundamental things that we need to have as fathers and husbands, if we are not afraid of losing those things, we are more capable of speaking out truth when truth is being fought against by our, the government or whoever else. So that's a whole, different direction.
Man, that's really good. I didn't plan on going down that trail, but I'm glad you did, because one of the things I'm working on for the new year is kind of a little financial series. I've been talking with some guys, and
nice.
It's I'm starting to hear from people who I've never heard be concerned about money stuff, be concerned. And it's not just the inflation. It's not just, the gas prices. It's everything right now. And it's making them very nervous. And what, in your mind, what are some things people could do to kind of prepare?
Oh, gosh. It depends on where you're at financially, right? Like, and I am not a financial planner.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And this is not financial advice, right?
Yeah.
It's a little blurb you got to throw out there, because I think there's a lot of things you can do. And I think that you have to look at your personal picture of where you are financially and what flexibility you have and what your goal is, right? Like, do you have wealth? Like, do you have cash money, right? Do you have some money in savings? Now, in my opinion, is saving money, and when I mean money, I mean, like, let's say American dollars in a bank account, is a pretty dangerous place to put your money right now, because we don't know when, we don't know a timeline. It's kind of hard to predict. There's a lot of predictions out there of what inflation is going to do, when we might turn a corner and we might have some kind of bad situation happen with banks, where it's harder to get your money. There's even a lot of talk about whether the United States, and I mean, not whether, but it is factual that it is written that the United States is in fact researching a I'm lacking the acronym right now, but it's basically a centralized digital currency.
Yeah.
So like crypto for governments, and what that could do for us as Christians it could be very scary, right? Like,
definitely.
Let's say we are standing for Christ, and let's say I want to post something on my social media about there being two genders, right? And that goes against every narrative that I'm not supposed to say, especially here where I live in California. And so if all of my wealth was tied up in the government's game, and it was their digital currency, and I had there's no paper money, it's just digital now, which really, when we use our credit card, right, it kind of feels like digital currency. We're already there.
Yeah.
Like, there's, a lot of people no, it'll never happen. It's like, well, we're kind of already using it. The problem is, when you swipe a credit card, the reason why there's a huge fee to it is because eventually someone has to get in a truck, load it with cash, and drive it to another bank. And that's super inefficient. If currency was actually digital, it would be way more efficient. Can't argue that. What you can argue is who controls that digital money. And if the government controls it and sees my post and goes, your money's off, you don't get to spend money, right? Or they limit the amount of money that you have too much. They limit the amount that you can save, right? Like, there's talk about, and this is one of the European digital currencies that they're talking about. And I can say there's a confidence because I know that other countries are in fact researching these digital currencies. I know for a fact that I think Venezuela has already kind of tried it and it's not working, or no, they've tried all kinds of stuff, but there are other countries that have tried a digital currency. So this is an actual thing. It's not crazy talk. It feels like crazy talk because it's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, what I would suggest is if you have wealth you're trying to protect, is to put it to something that has actual tangible value. Silver, gold, there are those two things that people talk about a lot, but usually the people who are talking about silver and gold are also tied to a company and they're like, by the way, I sell silver and gold. And so you're like, do I believe you? Yeah. It's hard to know, honestly. Like, set yourself up so that you can survive. Like, do you have some spare food that will kind of, if food prices go through the moon, can you deal with not having that? Do you have access to the basics? Housing? Is your housing pretty safe and secure? Is your savings in multiple things? I think, for me personally, I've tried to take what little I have and try to diversify it around a couple different things. Sure. Because of the history of mortgage banking, I really love kind of playing with real estate and rentals and stuff like that. My wife and I kind of worked real hard to get a little house, and then we were able to keep that little house when we moved and then rent that out. And then we eventually sold that. We bought a condo in Utah, but we sold that condo in January because I was seeing how many properties were being built. Yeah, and I'm like, this second home thing and like the rental property and the Airbnb, I'm like, there's too much. It can't last forever. So we sold it, and now we're trying to figure out like what's the next step, and it's hard to figure out.
Yeah.
But I think every man has got to kind of figure out what's the best option and really research, like seriously research and study. It takes a lot of time. I'm no genius, and I've been trying to read and listen to smart guys, and it seems like the smart thing is to kind of have a little bit everywhere, but cash money is not the greatest place to be. Unless you have some cash money that you could keep some that's actual paper that you physically hold. If you have like a safe or something, keep it there, because if there is a crash coming, there will most likely be businesses that go out of business or housing that's cheap, or, I'm already hearing stories of people buying, vintage hot rods and all this kind of stuff that used to be like hold a premium, but all the people that own these are now like kind of freaking out and starting to sell these for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
Sure.
So like there will be opportunity. It's kind of hard to say that because you don't want to take advantage of someone else's downturn. However, to protect yourself, you might want to have a certain amount of cash on hand to then buy things that actually hold value and then use those to sell, whether that's eBay or locally or barter or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
who knows who knows how deep the hole goes, and this hole could go forever.
Yeah. And I don't put too much into elections anymore, but I really thought after this last few years we've had and the spiral that we're heading down, I really thought things would go a little different, but it's like,
I think a lot of us did.
I just don't think a lot of people are awake, or they just don't care, or just send me a check in the mail. I don't know. And that's simple economics, right? Yeah.
Like the more of something you have, the less rare it is, therefore the less valuable it is. So let's just blow trillions of dollars into the economy and be like, that's not going to it's no big deal. Fine. No, it's eventually going to cause a problem. And I think it really did even get the Federal Reserve, caught them off guard.
Yeah.
I think they genuinely thought they could control it. And now they're seeing they kind of can't.
Yeah.
And so I think the hardest thing to predict right now would be what's going to crash harder, like the dollar and the amount of buying power a dollar has, or things like housing.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's kind of like multiple bubbles that we're looking at, and you don't know which one's going to hit harder. And trying to predict that is, for me, it's kind of impossible. So I'm trying to kind of just be ready in whatever scenario,
Yeah.
Bought a deep freezer and a
we're
and a vacuum sealer deal.
Actually, yeah, no joke. Yeah, we're
start talking to my buddies who raise pigs, so I can start just kind of filling the freezer.
Yeah, I'm serious. Yeah, I talked to a guy the other night. He's a homesteader. He runs a popular YouTube channel, The White House on the Hill, and they left Kansas City and moved to the country and started homesteading. And he loves it because they hardly buy anything anymore. And
that's awesome. I have a couple brothers and we all live here locally. Like, so about me and my wife and our daughter, and then my brother and his wife and their kiddos, and my other brother, they're a little bit, they don't have kids yet, but like all of us are here, so we're always talking about this stuff. And one of my brothers has been talking about, even though we live Southern California, if you go far enough east, it's pine trees, and it's it's pretty desolate out there. And so we're kind of looking out there and be like, maybe we could hold some property, and like we could have like kind of like a farm thing going on, like if we really needed it, because one of my brothers is into like red chickens, and so
I think there's some of that we've lost in our society, and we've gotten used to good times, and I talk about that sometimes. Good times create weak men, and I
was about to say that,
and we're
there. We've created a lot of weak men.
And it's going to be these hard times that bring out the strong ones again, and hopefully, I think my hope is that we're part of that, and or at least we point that generation to start it again. And,
we impact this whatever sphere we've got. You impact that sphere, and you help. If there's enough men saying no, go this way. And to be honest, a lot of single moms are pointing the right direction too, because they are in the position they're in because of weak men. And so I know some single moms that have some sons, and they're pointing them in the right direction, which is cool, making sure their sons have mentors and stuff like that. So, but it's on us. In fact, the sphere that you have, whatever that is, whether I've got 3 followers on my little Instagram page and my goofy little podcast, or who cares? You just do what you do.
You're exactly right. And I wonder, thinking about behaviors, what are some things, because this last year turned things upside down. So, truth be told, I'm a pastor of a small rural church in a rural town.
Okay, I was going to ask. I was wondering if you were a youth pastor or a pastor. Okay, cool.
I kind of do both. So, and I've seen some dramatic shifts in behaviors, and some things came out last year, but now I think some things are really starting to hit people hard. Processing the last 2 years, whether some feel like they were just lied to the whole time. Some feel like they shouldn't have been pressured. They regret whatever decisions they made. Some are just trying to find a way forward. I'm just wondering, from a behavior standpoint, what are some things you're seeing in men right now?
Okay, so this is my super fun, controversial statement about human behavior that like tweaks most Christians, and we get to work through it. But all human behavior is a product of a history of reinforcement. All of it. And I've tried to disprove that, because the first time I heard it in class, I'm like, no. And so then I started processing it through it, because when I was going through grad school, I was also I was basically a youth pastor. I ran their youth high school program there for a couple of years. I mentored the same group of guys from when they were in 6th grade all the way through high school. I got to follow them. It was super fun. And so I was working in youth ministry a lot, and really that's why I ended up going into education, because I realized that God made me to work with kids, not moving money around for rich people and getting judged on how good I do that. And so anyway, so human behavior, so I was very challenged by that statement. And the more I unraveled it, and the more I kind of looked at my own behavior, I was like, yeah. But as Christians, and this is the crux of where behaviorism goes sideways for most Christians, is because Christians use a word about behavior a lot, or motivation, where they'll say, oh, I just want to be intrinsically motivated. The fact of the matter is, intrinsic motivation doesn't really exist, because the way we say it is like internal magic motivation. Now, the truth is, usually when someone says intrinsic motivation, that's what we would call socially mediated behavior. Right. So to get super basic, and I'm building to something. So this is a long story, but I'm building to something. Yeah. So intrinsic motivation, right? It feels like magic motivation. It's like, no, we as humans do things for a reason. And if we see someone in a classroom, and it's because that's my world, or I talk to teachers all the time. They're like, oh, I want to be intrinsically motivated. And, Sarah, I tell her the class what to do, and Sarah just does what I say. And it's like, okay, well, was she in a classroom with 30 or 25 other kids? Yes. Does she like the people around her? Yes. Does she like the attention for being a good kid in class? Well, yeah. Okay. So that's socially mediated behavior. She is doing what is expected in society, because society kind of has a strong hold on what we do. We behave a certain way because we want to be accepted or not by our peers. So peer motivated, socially motivated. That's most of what intrinsic motivation is. Now, kids that, people that do things that they're problem behaviors and like, I just wanted to be intrinsically motivated. And it's like, no, you want him to see the natural motivations or the natural reinforcers that he can access. They're doing the right things, like getting an A on a math test. Kid in fourth grade doesn't understand that has any value to his future or anywhere else. So we have to like kind of manifest or make these reinforcers for him. Where you get like a stamp, and then after 5 stamps, then you can have blah, 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 blah. You and I go to work and we have things that we have to provide for. So if we never got a paycheck, we would not go to work anymore and we would look for a new job. Like, that's a reinforcer. Money is a reinforcer.
Definitely.
The piece that messes with Christians is that they're like, wait, but God made us and the Holy Spirit. Yes. I would call that is an internal motivation. I would say that I am personally motivated by feeling internal peace with God. And I can tell you that that's a real thing in my life, because I spent a large part of my life at odds with God after my parents divorced when I was like 14, and I went a whole different direction. With left the school I was at, went to the public school, wrote off my mom, partied with my friends, whole different group of people, got in a lot of trouble. We can, like, there's a whole different story that has to do, ended up in Vegas with a bunch of my buddies, and, realizing what we were getting into and what they were getting into was so far off from morality, what I thought it was. It was, my Damascus Road situation. Everything that I valued and held on to in that moment no longer had any value. And it was like, I could see everything. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing? And that, I cannot, like, that inner peace is the most powerful reinforcer. It's a very mechanical word to use, but it's accurate. Is an internal reinforcer that the Holy Spirit has access to a part of me that nothing else does. And that is what motivates the Christian. And so when I say humans, all behavior is mediated or controlled by a history of reinforcement. The last time I went against the grain and was hated by X, Y, and Z people, and I said some things that I knew were right and I knew were good, but I got, basically shunned in here, I felt right. And it was okay. Right? So that is where, that right there is kind of the foundation of, I would say, behaviorism. And so if you start from that statement, all behavior is a product of a history of reinforcement, then you can start to figure out what's going on with your kids, right? And usually it's not quite as deep as, the Christian aspect. The reason I explain that is so that we as Christians can actually have this conversation about behaviorism without thinking I'm a crazy secular Looney Tune, because most Christians do. And I throw it at them and they're like, no, and then we argue and they're like, dang it, you're right. And so,
yeah.
But so as far as in the context of society today and what we're seeing with, and you're asking questions about kids, right? Like that was the specific question.
Yeah. Kids, men, cover it all.
Yeah. I mean, so what happened, earlier you talked about like hand out checks. Well, yeah, it's the money is usually for an adult, and some kids that get it is the most reinforcing thing possible because it gives them access to anything. Right. Like I like buying stuff for dirt bikes, like you like, I don't know, like you like hunting. Yeah. I don't know, whatever. Like you can go buy those things. I could go buy new handlebars for my motorcycle. You could go buy a new scope, I don't know, or whatever, like money gives you access to those things. So you start mailing people stimulus checks. Oh my gosh, some more of that because it felt good in that moment to be reinforced by that stimulus check. Most people are not mature enough to see past their own personal right now and see that, that stimulus check down the road is going to cause what's likely going to happen in the next 6 months. And really for sure in the next, years, whatever that looks like. Right. And so it's, one aspect of behaviorism that makes me not able to answer your question acutely is that every individual You have to, for me to say what's going on with a kid, like I have to sit there and observe typically for like hours and hours on multiple different days and take data and look at the antecedent and the behavior and the consequence, which is like what happened right before the behavior happened, what was the behavior, what happened directly after it, and what happened before it. If we can consistently say like there was a antecedent that happened regularly before Jimmy punched Sarah, and then we can say that there was something that happened after it every single time. Then we can say, well, okay, every time this predictor happens, this antecedent, we can change that. That's a, and then if we can see this, well, we can see this happens afterwards, because after Jimmy punching Sarah, that's a weird analogy. Every time Jimmy yells out in class, right? Well, every time the predictor is math. Okay, open your math homework. Throw a chair. And then the consequence afterwards is he gets sent out of the classroom. Like you just gave that kid exactly what he wants. He got out of math and he's alone outside, right? Yep. So he's going to do it again. He's going to do it again and again and again. And that's how bad behavior is basically started. As a parent, the easiest analogy for us as parents, right?
Yep.
Baby crying. Oh my gosh, like fingers on a chalkboard every time. And so there's multiple things going on. There's the baby who's screaming and crying in bed. And it's like, no, we know baby just needs to cry it out because that's what's good for the baby, and she's got to sleep through the night, right? Yep. Like you get to that point where like we can't pick up the baby. But on the other side, you're being punished and you've got this thing that's screaming and you want it to stop.
Yeah.
So the screaming baby, parent goes in, picks up the baby. Okay. The baby was just full-blown reinforced for screaming. Sweet. Every time I scream, mommy or daddy come and they pick me up. I love mommy and daddy. And baby screams, you're like, super reverse stimuli, right? And then you go in, pick up the baby, you are reinforced. When I pick up the baby, I don't have to listen to screaming. And so that's the vicious cycle that happens with a lot of parents that like, well, of course the baby's going to scream and yell. And then you play that out to a teenager.
Yep.
And often that happens.
Yep.
Like look at some kids and you're like, no, your parents should have just let you scream in your room. Like stop coddling.
Yeah. You're exactly
I cannot
right.
tell you how often I deal with that all the time. I don't know if you can tell. That's very.
Oh yeah. I see it.
Yeah. It's very real in my world.
You're dealing with the everyone gets a trophy generation.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
There's a lot of. I run our town's little league, and I'm kind of known as the one who is not a. You don't put in the work, right. You don't get a trophy person. And, and, I'm not,
That's great.
I balance it out. I love building those relationships, having fun with kids, all that kind of stuff. But, I think if men aren't the ones who are going to start standing in the gap, standing in the, saying, no, actually you throw a fit, you're not playing anymore. You know what I mean? You're over there crying, doing whatever, or you're doing, Now, I'm not talking about T-ball, obviously. I mean, if I can get 2 kids to actually know what to do in T-ball, we're doing pretty good. But we have a lot of sandcastles out there in the field. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. But it's like, if we aren't the ones, at some point men started not stepping up, not doing or reinforcing what should be reinforced, or stopping the things that should not keep continuing. And I don't know.
Absolutely.
I talked to a lot of guys about this, and like when they saw this transition happen, and no one can quite tell me when that was, but there was definitely a time, and it was kind of probably progressive, because I mean, it's just a problem. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. And I would say it was the classic millennial joke, right?
Yeah.
But I would say it was in the late 80s, early 90s when that shift happened in parenting styles. And I was born in 81, my brother in late 82, and then my third brother in 86. And by my peers versus my youngest brother's peers, who was born in 87. Yeah, 87, I think, because he's 6 years younger than me. Anyway, so my youngest brother, who's born in 87, my peers versus his peers were starkly different in the way that they were raised. And it's blatant. So it was somewhere near that late 80s. I think that's, I fight the title of millennial, but they keep coming back and saying you had to be born in 80. I'm like, no, 81. I'm not a millennial.
Yeah.
I had a pager. Millennials didn't have pagers.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but to your point about men need to stand in the gap. So, you had a really good point. So the trend, I think that's when the trend in parenting started. But the idea of making sure you are rewarding the right things, that's where I was going to go. Okay. We're making sure that we are rewarding the right things in our kids. And in youth and people that we train and things like that is so important. And what I've learned is that instead of rewarding everybody for just trying, you reward actual effort. And sometimes you value things at different levels, right? Like, so I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I want her to fail her way to success. Right? I believe pretty firmly that, the phrase failure leads to success.
Yes.
The problem is, by taking a kid that completely failed and handing them the trophy like they just succeeded, that is a problem, because you've taught them you have accomplished the goal. You did not accomplish the goal. You actually didn't even get close. You ran a race and you finished 30th out of 30. Like, you may have finished, yay, good job, but we need you to push harder. However, there's a nuance here that we need to make sure that we are not making our kids afraid of failure by so elevating the reward for full success, like winning the race. Basically, there is nothing except for full victory. Well, like in learning math, in learning anything, and starting a business, right? Like you start a business. How on earth is anybody going to learn how to start a business and figure out an LLC or an S corp or all that kind of stuff without just kind of failing their way through it? And if you listen to or talk to smart people that have built these massive companies, it's like, I had no idea what I was doing. I just started and screwed up so many times it's ridiculous. And so those are the kind of people that we want to build. So make sure that we are rewarding actual effort. Like, way to go! You played your hardest. I'll give an example of this. Like last night, my little girl had her last AYSO soccer game. Right, bunch of little 6-year-olds running around, kind of playing soccer. And I told her. So I've started this thing with her, and this kind of goes back to my money thing. Started this thing with her to where I have some silver coins, some silver ounces. And so, I took her with me when went to the silver guy, and we bought these coins. So she was there. It's kind of cool. She got to pick out some, and I let her see them. But I told her that, she saved up $20, and the spot price of silver when she saved up $20 the spot price of silver was $20 when she had her $20. I'm like, here's the deal. You can keep this cash, and it's $20, and you can go buy something, or I'll let you buy from me one of those silver coins. And so we talked about it as much as a 6-year-old can understand. Yeah. And I said, and if you buy the silver coin, you keep it in the safe, and I'll let you look at it anytime you want, and you can think it's cool. Oh, that's really cool. And so it's kind of, she didn't quite get it. Yeah. But I said, if the price of this silver, I'm like, this is real. This is actually real. This paper money is nothing. So I'm starting to kind of teach her that. Yeah. But anyway, I told her in the soccer game, if you score a goal, because she hasn't scored a goal yet this year, you score a goal, I'll give you another silver coin. Right. And so she's like, all right. So she she tried super hard. She tried to score that goal, and she didn't score a goal by the end of the game. And so after the game, she's like, Daddy, I tried really hard. I'm like, you did. And I gave her a big high five. I was so proud of her, huge hugs. You did your best. So proud of her. Do I get the silver coin? No. And that's hard as a dad. Oh my gosh, that was rough. I wanted to, but I'm like, no, I cannot. That's here. And when she scores a goal, it'll be that much sweeter for her to earn that reward. Now, I'm sure there's, depending, I don't know how many men are listening, but so many that are like, you're paying your daughter to score goals in AYSO? Heck yes, I am. And I also read the Narnia books, and we pray every night. Yep. And we know that God is the savior of our soul, not money. But I will pay her to score goals.
Proper motivation.
Right. So, my analogy was simply to say, we have to reinforce or reward effort, but it has to be actual effort. You actually tried, because they need to feel that their parents are proud of them, even when they fail at something they tried really hard at. But then there needs to be another carrot that's even bigger and higher for actually winning. You didn't win. Sarah won. You need to go give her a high five and, like give her a hug and say, good job. You lost.
Yeah.
And they're like, dang, and so I think that's one of the things that dads really need to understand. Like you said, stand in the gap. You need to hold the line, and you by over rewarding our children, we are robbing them the feeling of success. Ooh, because they do not truly know the feeling of success. And I deal with this so regularly, it's crazy. Where, these kids, they've never felt true success because they've always just been coddled. Their parents are so afraid of the crying or the whining or, fine, here's an iPad, just watch TV or whatever. Like, no, we need, by withholding the things that they want, we are showing them the value of the things that they want. And when they work for something and earn it, and then you allow them to have that thing that they worked for, the value of their work increases as well. And so if we're talking human behavior, like, be careful what you reward.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm smiling because I'm super competitive. So I've got 4 kids. One will be 13 here in like 2 weeks, or 2 weeks. A 9-year-old boy, a 5-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old boy. And so the oldest is a girl. And, we play, Switch games and Mario Kart and all that kind of stuff. And for the longest time, my oldest could not beat me. And I'm like, I'm not going to let you win. I will not let you win. And now she's gotten to the point where she does beat me. And I'm like, I just don't want to play anymore. I'm like, I'm just going to quit. Second's the first loser.
Dad, don't turn off the benchmark.
The first time she beat me, I mean, she stood up and yelled, and she's like,
dude, that is awesome. That is so awesome. And it's I do that with my daughter as well. Like, she started to like chess. I'm like, okay, I was terrible at chess, but it's a cool game. I love strategy.
Yeah.
So play chess, and I beat her. And like, I think she beat me one time. I was kind of, we were just screwing around. I was teaching her. I was helping her play, and she beat me. And then from that point, she thought that she could beat me. And then I just crushed her like 3 times. And she's like, Dad, and she like started crying. Like, I want to win. I'm like, okay, get better.
Yeah.
Get better. If you want to get better, we talked about practicing and getting better. And we've been doing this for like 2 months now. And she's getting closer. Actually, no, she's beaten me twice, legit, where I'm just like, you're 6.
Don't get better.
Well, no, it's great because she feels it, right? Like, it just like your kid. Like, they're like, I beat my dad, and they know because you crushed them before. They know that you're not just faking. Like, they earned it. This is mine.
Yeah.
And so then like proud of her.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. It's interesting. Each kid's different in how they handle those. So my youngest, the 2.5-year-old, I have a feeling he's going to be the one that just like picks up the game and throws it across the. Because he gets mad. And he's he's different, and it's been I kind of wonder if you've seen some of this. I don't know how young you work with, but
6.
Okay, so he'd be younger.
Well, I have my own kid, and I've
But he was born in the middle of 2020, and
oh wow, okay.
So he missed out on a lot of social interaction, and he's very different than the other ones were at that age. And it's been something I've noticed in other parents who've had kids at that age too. And I've read a few studies where schools are actually teaching those kids as if they were autistic, because there's some social cues and dynamics that and truthfully, I mean, we weren't huge mass people or any of that kind of stuff. So he saw us a lot, but the interaction with others was very limited.
Yeah. Funny you should say autistic, because I wrote a paper about that time that I sent to all of our administrative staff and then also to our board, that basically in the letter I predicted that because of masking, we will see an increase in diagnosis of autism and generalized anxiety disorder, and specifically autism, because I'm in my office here. I got my DSM-5. Yeah. This book right here. If you look at the qualifying criterion for autism, it's observable behavior. It's not a blood test. It's not, you don't need it's all observable. And they're based off of, most of them based off of social skills and ability to read nonverbal cues. And like facial expressions have a lot to do with that. And I mean, the mask thing is not good. No. And so, yeah, I saw this coming and I'm like, this is not good, guys. We can't play this game. And we did a pretty good job at the schools I work at with going around what we were told.
Well, you are in California, so.
Yeah.
I'm in Illinois.
It was ridiculous. And it was ridiculous. And because I'm the special ed director, I read the CDC guidelines very differently than most others. And basically there were a whole bunch of ways around all the mask stuff because of students with disability and like the use of face shields and all this kind of stuff. And so, I mean, there were legal ways to not have to have kids in masks in school. The talking head said that, but that's not what the actual law said. Yeah. Like I read the laws. I'm like, guys, this is what the law says. Yeah. Let's do this. Yeah. Instead of listen to Nancy Pelosi or whoever.
Yeah. I hear you.
Whoever
Yeah. We homeschool, so our kids didn't really.
Yeah, I was homeschooled.
They didn't notice any difference in school, like because they just kept trekking on, which. They knew their friends weren't going, so they were kind of like, what's going on here? But they didn't miss a beat in that regard. So that was awesome. Right. But, I mean, there were other challenges we had from that. But we never thought we'd be homeschool parents, but it just kind of worked out that way. In my particular pastoring, I work Sundays. So my weekend is Friday and Saturday, basically. Right. So if we want to go somewhere, we're going Friday and Saturday or leaving Thursday night, so homeschooling just kind of works for us. There's challenges and I've seen a lot of opportunities too,
look, I personally, I will encourage you. I know I was homeschooled all the way through 8th grade, till like right before my parents divorced and stuff like that. But I love homeschool. My brothers were homeschooled. I have a ton of friends that are, grown adults now that everybody in the 80s was like, weirdo. Yeah. And they're just fine. and they're actually more successful in many ways than the counterparts that went to public school. So keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. Homeschool's awesome.
I appreciate it.
If you have the capacity to pull it off, do it.
Yeah.
That's my input as a guy here that works with students from both. Yeah. And we work our tails off here to do school with lots of kids the best we can do it, but there's limitations and parents can do it better. Don't let people tell you your kids are going to be weird. No, they're not. They're going to hang out with adults. Oh, you're raising adults. We don't want to raise children. You want to raise adults. Ooh. They're supposed to be successful adults.
That's really good. So that's a
good
point.
Their vocabulary, their homeschool kids tend to have better vocabulary because they talk to their parents all day instead of a bunch of, punk kids.
Yeah.
So they need to be around kids. They need to be kids.
Yeah.
But they're going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, there's good things. I mean, my daughter, oldest, she's hitting pre-algebra this year. So, and for me and her mom, we're like, we kind of remember it, but not a lot.
Right.
You're a little
That's
bit
where
on
the
your
support
own.
comes in. You got to find the other people that homeschool you.
Yeah.
When you started hitting high school, you're like, calculus?
We're going to have to outsource that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's just lots of opportunities. She gets to go help with a local farm, a couple days a week. She takes care of horses. So cool. She does all that kind of stuff. And there's just lots of opportunities that she's allowed to do. But I mean, you just said something there, about we're trying to raise adults. And in particular, my channel is geared towards encouraging men to be better men. What are some of those essentials we should be encouraging more in men, in your opinion?
As far as from the father perspective?
Raising adults? Father, work.
Okay, so I working with youth, one of the things that I think is a fundamental construct of growing into an adult, right? I believe it has to do with personal responsibility. And that is part of what changed my life as a young man when I was 23 or something like that. I realized that I no longer had the right to blame my parents and everybody around me for my jacked upness. The moment I recognize my own problems, they are my problem. I cannot blame anybody else, and it's on me to fix it. So I believe that a man becomes a man once he takes himself under his own control. Once he stops blaming someone else for who he is, and he starts being personally responsible to fix his own problems. Yep, there are things that happen to us that are not our fault. There are things that happen to us that suck, that are really hard. My life, you know, I had some stuff happen. It's not the worst. A million men have had harder stuff happen. However, the only valuable thing that we can do to help ourselves become the men that God created us to be is recognize that our faults and our problems are our problems. They may have started because of an event. They're our problem to fix. If we blame someone else, they will never get fixed, ever. They're out of our control. We are a victim. And when you decide that you are a victim, you have no control over your life, and you're just a passenger in your own life. So I think that is one of the first priorities as men are growing into adulthood. They need to recognize, yeah, a lot of bad stuff happens, you know, whether it's with families or parents or whatever, school or friends or relationships or whatever. A lot of bad stuff happens. And this goes for us adults too. And I find myself from time to time just being mad about everything around me. And I'm like, okay, I can't fix it. I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to talk to God for a minute and let him smack me around and tell me what a goof I am. And, you know, say some prayers and say some forgive me, Lord. And then, okay, get back on the horse. We're going to ride. I'm sorry. I screwed up. That was my fault. You know? And so all of us need to kind of recognize that. And I think it's a constant, like we constantly need to reevaluate our own responsibility for ourselves. But that's specifically important for young boys growing into men. And a boy is not a man until he has taken responsibility for his own actions. That's one of the first things I think. Another piece would be the word maturity, right? So I believe that the definition of maturity is the ability to put off a good now for a greater good later. The more mature a man is, the more able he is to see that the stimulus check I got now is going to destroy me in the future, and to use that stimulus check to protect him in the future. Right? Everyone's getting these dumb stimulus checks. I don't agree with it. However, the only way I protect myself from the inflation and the destruction that this causes is to use this stimulus check to invest in something that might be worth more when the market crashes. Yep. You know, and so that's just a dumb analogy. But the truth is, men need to work toward maturity and recognizing that suffering today will eventually create you better tomorrow. In my personal life, if someone was to ask me, if you were to ask me, and I'll ask myself, what was the best thing that ever happened to you? It usually shocks people when I say my parents' divorce. And I do not believe that God caused my parents' divorce or that was the right thing. But through that sin thing, I walked through fire and hell and came back to who I am today. And I have a story and experience that connected me with a group of kids that I never would have been connected with before because of my personal, I understand what they were going through. There was a group of guys that, you know, when I was doing a youth ministry and even today from time to time, a group of guys that were going through similar stuff. And I created this kind of like a small group for guys whose parents were divorced. And we worked through all kinds of stuff. It was a really powerful deal. I don't know if I'd have had the confidence or even the awareness to see how valuable that was going to be had I not been through it myself. So the ministry and the strength that God has built into me exists now because of that event. He can redeem anything. You know, the hardest times in our life, he can redeem it if you allow him. And so, you know, I think that, and something that I've said to a ton of guys that I've worked with is, look, God will put you through this so that you can be powerful to someone else later. You're going through this, and this, if you allow it, God will use this to build you into a bulldog that will fight for him later. You cannot be crushed by this. God will get you through it. You know, and I think that the life I have today, I couldn't see it any other way, and I don't wish it was any different. And you know, God redeemed a pretty bad situation. And the cool thing is, I have an awesome relationship with my mom and an awesome relationship with my dad.
That's awesome.
And both of my parents, they're still separated, but both of my parents are both godly people. My dad, I go to for advice all the time. He's probably my best friend right now.
Yeah.
And he and I talk about this manhood stuff all the time.
Awesome.
My mom is incredible. In fact, she started the school that I work for 25 years ago.
Wow.
And so I kind of followed in her footsteps on that in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, it's amazing to see what God can redeem if you allow him. And you don't let the anger of whatever situation's happening to just create you into a hateful person. The hardest part is living through the hard part, right?
Yeah.
Because in the moment, I couldn't have heard you in that moment. But looking back on it, the best thing that happened to me was my parents' divorce because of the ministry that God allowed me to be a part of, because he redeemed those experiences that I had.
That's awesome.
So
that's a really that's powerful. That's a powerful story. I mean, it really is. I think there's going to be somebody that listens to this that has gone through something similar, if not the same thing that you have gone through.
Yeah, over 50% of marriages.
Exactly. And I just think, I mean, a lot of people, they just focus on, the negative and what bad has happened. And the sooner we get to looking at the ways God can use that, the better, and the better ways he will use us to help others in those situations as well. And I do think that's something that we've lost, especially as we look at like Titus 2 and 1 Timothy as well, and the older men helping the younger men. And, we've kind of lost that in the church a little bit, I think. And we need to bring it back, and it needs to come back, because we're pretty close in age, but there's, older men who we can learn a lot from, and we are learning a lot from. And that's why I find this so encouraging, is because we can bounce things off one another. And there's always something that's said that really just sticks with me personally. Totally. And I think, and from the messages I get, I know it's sticking with others as well as they listen to this. And it's just really cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's really awesome.
One of the things that you kind of sparked in my mind about, there's this saying in a lot of churches, and actually I heard you say it in one of your podcasts, and I love the way you talked about emotions. Yeah. About emotions being important. They're valid. Men have emotions. Mm-hmm. You cannot let emotions control you. And that was what you said. And I love the way that you said that. And one of the things that I've thought regularly is that I hear so much this, we need to normalize, men talking about their feelings and mental health, no, we don't, not anymore. We've done it too much. Men are calling themselves women all over the place. Like, stop it. We don't need to normalize men talking about their feelings anymore. I get it. Like, here and understand, I am an insanely emotional guy. Like, I don't know if you can tell I'm like a little fiery, but then, I'll cry on the drop of a hat. And I recognized this in myself a long time ago, that if I was controlled by my emotions, I'd go all kinds of crazy places. But our emotions our emotions are full of crap. If we chase our emotions, we end up in this mess that we're in right now in this country, right? That is where we're at. So I don't think we need to normalize mental health. It's so overplayed. Like, this is the world I live in. I'm at school psych. I read all the research. I read all the California nonsense that comes out at me from the state organizations and, the counseling kids stuff and all this stuff. And like this normalizing mental health, I'm like, it's normal. In fact, it's not normal to say, I'm not emotionally damaged. Like, that's abnormal. We've made it to a point where if you are not a victim in some way, you're lying. Yeah, you are, or you're just a jerk. Yeah. If you will not admit your victimhood, then you're just a jerk. Or, it's ridiculous. Yeah. And men, yes, we have emotions, absolutely. And we need to be aware of our emotions. And there's a time to chat and talk about our emotions. But one of the most powerful passages, and I'm going to read this real quick, and I had this one up because this is, I love the story of Gideon. And I think everybody that does the manhood thing ends up reading Gideon at some point. Like, the lap in the water. But we won't lap that one's controversial. Get into the first thing that God tells Gideon when they're going to go fight the Midian Midianites. And he goes, okay, so Judges, starting Judges 7:1, it's to Zerubbabel, and that's Gideon, and all the people who are with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod, and they camped, and the camp of Midian was north of them. So they're going to fight the Midianites, and they're by a hill. And then the Lord says to Gideon, the people with you are too many for me to give them into the Midianites to their hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying, my own hand has not saved me. So there's too many people. He wants less people to go fight Midian, because God is the one that's going to be glorified through this. You know, he's got 32,000 people is how many people that he's got with him at the moment. He's like, nah, it's way too many. If I send all 32,000, then you'll get the glory. I want the glory of God. So then he says in verse 3, now therefore proclaim to the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead. And then 22,000 men left. 22,000 men left. Yeah, right? Out of 32,000. And so, like, we all know the story, but like that's a staggering number.
Yeah.
Those who are afraid and trembling. I could make an argument to say God said something to the effect of, hey, all those guys that are talking about their feelings in the back of the camp, send them home.
Yeah.
They don't have the ability to be my tools in war. So as men, we need to stop talking about our feelings so much, and we need to start normalizing God's power and faith. Mm-hmm. Because often our feelings manifest a bunch of fear that eliminates our faith. Because fear is the antithesis of faith.
Yes. And
faithful men who are weak and terrible speakers like Moses, or go down the list, unworthy, Paul killed all kinds of Christians, like all these men who were not worthy, but had faith. God did amazing things through them, and God got the glory. But a fearful man that is talking about his emotions and his mental health all day, how on earth is your faith going to come through and prove God's greatness? That is our job as men, right?
Yes.
Like,
that's awesome.
So, I mean, so I think that we need to start normalizing overcoming. We need to start normalizing, look, I went through hell and I was jacked and jacked up in the head and messed up, and my emotions were a mess, and God put me together. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think I was worthy of anything, but God did this, because that's the story of the apostles.
Yes.
Right? Like,
definitely.
that is who they were. They were a mess. And then God said, come, and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then the doors open. And if you read the Gospels with kind of like with a little bit of humor in your heart, like you'll laugh at the disciples. Like, these guys are apostles. They're hilarious. Yeah. Oh my gosh, they're great. They're hilarious. What's that show, The Chosen? I think does a pretty good job of just kind of showing how these guys are a bunch of dudes like in the desert, and Jesus kind of is like, guys, no, no, this is the way. No, this is the way. Yeah. And so we need to start normalizing God's strength over our mental weakness. How about that?
That's really good. That's something I've been working on with my 9-year-old son, and just. As you're saying that, I'm hearing myself talking to him, because, I mean, he tends to be more emotional, tends to be, he gets worked up about things and different, situations. And, we're I've got a little gym in our basement that we kind of work out in and do some, stuff to stay active and all that kind of stuff. And, one of the signs I have up on the wall is nobody cares, work harder. And when he starts whining at me about something, I just point to the side, because at the end of the day, I mean, obviously I care about whatever he's going in, but as he becomes, older, the truth is nobody's going to care if you're unhappy about this thing. So work harder, either change it, or like you're saying, overcome it, learn how to overcome. So that's something that we are, constantly trying to figure out and work on, because that's going to be his challenge, and I can see it now. And
that's rad.
If we can identify it now, then we can start working on it, more purposefully as he, develops and grows and all those kinds of things. And it's fun. But I think what you're getting at there is something that is desperately needed in our culture. I mean, it just is. I mean, and especially as our culture turns more and more anti-God, anti-Christian, anti-faith, it's going to become to the point where, and I think maybe these last 2 years played a part in it too, where those who were serious about it, about their faith, had to make that choice. Am I really a follower or am I not? And it, know, I don't know of any church that really returned back to its pre-COVID levels. And part of that is because I think God used that to weed out some in the church that weren't real followers of Jesus. And it's challenging them to embrace the faith they claim to believe or say, maybe I don't believe this at all. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many will come to the throne and say, I did these miracles in your name and I did this in your name. And God will say, get out of here. I did not know you.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a passage that isn't really preached often, but it's real.
It's very real. Yes. I've been going through 1 John actually, and I've been hitting at a lot of that lately. And it's been, I know I've stepped on some toes, but it's been needed. It's been good for me too, to evaluate some things in my own life. But that's what I always tell people, like the stuff I'm teaching, the stuff I'm preaching, I've dealt with the whole week. You just get 40 minutes of it or whatever. I've been dealing with this every day for the last week. It's hard.
You know how frustrating it is to put together a lesson and you're like, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden God's testing you in that area and you're like, no, knock it off. I was going to tell all those other people
this is for them.
Stuff. Why am I dealing with this? I don't want to deal with a defiant kid right now. Or whatever. It seemed to work every time I was planning some lesson and I was going to teach, again, for all the kids. It was that was my struggle all week. And then my sermon or whatever you call it turned into me just talking about, this is what I lived through and this is how real it is. It's God, this week's been brutal. And this is why, because I learned what I was saying.
Let me tell you about the 2 hours leading up to the service this morning.
Right. These notes, they're gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been talking for over an hour now and we haven't even gotten to your channel. We haven't even talked about your Instagram.
Okay. Well, okay, so I had a couple reasons for doing the Restoring Manhood thing. I've been doing this. I started this idea back 15 years ago with the group of guys that I mentored when I started when they were 6th grade. In 8th grade, I started a manhood Bible study, and I built this little curriculum out of kind of just started looking at what biblical manhood is, and we studied it, and that's where this idea started. And then for the last 5 years, I've kind of dabbled with what can this look like, a little website and here and there. And so, I mean, I think 2 years ago, that's when I started actually posting. I kind of made a commitment myself. I'm gonna write every day for a year. And so I did that. And there was a couple of reasons why I did that, because I wanted to get kind of it was for my own purpose, kind of to get my words out somewhere so that I could store them to put them together. So I've got, at this point, I made it through my full year. I wasn't really looking to blow up on social media. I was just kind of I just want to just do this and see if anybody cares. That's great. But if not, at least the things that I believe will be written down for my daughter someday to read if she wants to. Definitely. And, the man that thinks that he's going to date her can see what her father's all about. Right.
Yeah,
so I mean, that was a part of it. Yeah. He's like, here, dude. But I wanted to get it down now. Since I've got that year done, I've kind of slowed down. Life's got a little crazy. My wife's dealt with a bunch of medical stuff over the last couple of years that has been really tough. And so I haven't had as much time to focus on this. And so, I need to be a father and a husband in my own family before I go out and tell the world how to, be a man. I got to do my life first. And so I haven't been as active in the last year or so, but I'm still here and I'm still, doing the stuff in my day-to-day life with my jobs and stuff. But I've got the content for a devotional. I want to do a manhood devotional that is quasi-biblical, where there's biblical scripture within it, but then a lot of other thoughts and ideas for people to work on. So I've got the content for that. I am working on putting that together. And then I'm also, if you actually go back to my Instagram and go back to early on, there are, I think there are 14 or 15 men are statements and then some stuff behind it. Now those are going to be the chapter headers for a book that I would like to write. Awesome. And so I'm working on that. It's, men are pervasively I don't know. It's blanking right now. It's too late. But are strongly weak or strongly gentle or powerfully gentle is the one of the kind of contradictory. I like that one a lot. Like, being a gentleman requires strength. It's you have to. A weak man is not gentle because he's just weak. Yeah. But a gentle man is a powerful man who has this power of voluntary control. So that kind of idea, and then I want to talk, go through some biblical examples and then some historical examples. Whether it's George Washington or, kind of some founding fathers type stuff. So I'm starting to put that together. And so I'd like to kind of write those two books. And then I'm kind of just slowly seeing where this goes.
Yeah.
I've got my little logo that I think is cool. And I've got some shirts that I wear around that no one else has. Like, what's that?
Yeah.
So yeah, no grandiose ideas except for I just want to help dudes. At some point down the road, I would like to kind of, if I can, grow this brand a little bit bigger for the intention of kind of getting the message out to a broader audience. But for now, I'm just kind of building this for me and letting God do with whatever it is. I've learned a lot because, you learn a lot when you write.
Definitely.
Like I said, I'm a little ADHD kid. Reading and writing was never my favorite thing, but somehow I made it through grad school and became a psych. And so
when there's purpose behind it, it usually helps too.
yeah. Right.
Yeah. I that would be awesome. So, yeah. Hit me up when you finish that devotional and stuff, because I would love to. I love promoting stuff like that. And I'm in a similar spot you are, where I'm slowly figuring out ways to kind of grow this thing and just try to provide more resources, more encouragement, trying to get it out there for guys so that they can just, part of it's just for guys to know they're not alone. Like, there's other guys doing this too. They're in the battle with you. Like, we're not alone out there. There's other guys like you can go to, you can trust, who are fighting the same things you are.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're doing is great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Just interviewing the guys out there that are doing similar kind of things and hearing perspectives. There's a lot of perspectives to be heard. And there's a lot of truth. These are the things that hit me because of my world and my context and my life stage. And that's what I'm pushing. And then you'll have other guys that say totally different stuff. And that's awesome and more powerful, or, it's great. Yeah. So I dig what you're doing. Keep it up.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Hey, where can people find you if they want to get a hold of you?
So Restoring Manhood, at Restoring Manhood at Instagram, and then also Restoring Manhood on Facebook are the two easiest ways. And if you search wherever you listen to podcasts, I've got, I think there's 12 episodes or something like that. That I'd like to add to, and I will at some point soon add to those podcasts. But so anywhere you find podcasts, so Apple's easy, Spotify, it's on all the places. So I publish on Buzzsprout, and it kind of goes everywhere. Awesome. So just look for Restoring Manhood, and that's me. It's got a logo that looks like this, and you've gone to the right place. So it's a little R with the M that looks like a road, a journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, I dig that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so. One thing I do at the end of every podcast, and I want to do this again at some point, because you've said a lot of things that I have questions on, and I've been writing some things down too. And I'm like, we could go for like another hour or so, but I want to respect your time. You got kids, all that kind of stuff. So
I want to at least kiss her goodnight and before she goes to bed. So.
Yeah. And so one thing I do is I give the guys out there a challenge for this week. Thanksgiving coming up here, holidays are coming up. It doesn't have to necessarily be geared towards that. It could be geared towards 2023. Yeah. Give them a challenge.
So first and foremost, get right with God. That's it. We have one job. It's to do what God called us to do. So get yourself right with God and do that thing. And the inner peace that you will access as a reinforcer will be greater than anything else. And another challenge, and I heard, this was a phrase that I heard from Ryan Mickler, so I can't steal it and say it's mine, but get your financial house in order. That phrase, get your financial house in order. Do some research, figure out where you're at. Make sure that you are, spending your time right, that whatever lack of money that you have is put in the right places and not wasted. Starting to put your money in the right places that will get you access to things that will help preserve or free you to have more time, I think is very important. So, and really this book right here, Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's a great starting point. And so, I mean, I've got a couple books here. I figured I just throw them here, so I pull them up from time to time. It's a great starting point to just figure out what wealth is about. And it's not about being rich. It's about being free to spend more time with your family and the people that you love, and free to be able to stand up against evil. Because if evil controls your money and your income, they control the food you give your family, they control your house, they control really so many things. And if evil controls that, then it will be significantly hard to fight up against evil. The more autonomous we are financially, the more able we will be to fight evil. Because evil cannot manipulate us by saying, we're going to take your pension, we're going to take away your money, we're going to, so just start the process. You don't have to all figure it out right now. And, just trust God.
Yeah.
Guess,
that's good. Yeah. I think that's a good chance. I've just started reading that, actually. I've had it for a while.
It's such a good book. Yeah.
Read it. So I've just started reading
it. It's a great oldie. It's an oldie. My dad handed it to me when I was like 22, 21. Huh. And I wish I would have taken the principles and started applying them then, instead of, when I was in mortgage banking as a stupid 20-year-old kid blowing every penny I had because it was funny and fun. But finally as an adult, it matters. It's like, frick, wish I would have done that when I was younger.
There's a lot of things we wish we would have done.
We wouldn't have as many stories.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. Hey, Troy, I really appreciate this conversation. I've been really encouraged by it, and I think guys are going to be encouraged by it as well. Yeah.
Awesome. You're very welcome. Great meeting you. Feel like I made a friend.
Yes. Same here. So let's do it again. All right.